This is Jennifer Mason. I am excited to have you guys be part of this webcast today. This one is No Code Solutions. It's getting started with SharePoint 2013 workflows, and we're going to focus on creating some simple notification emails. So many times when you're doing things inside of SharePoint, the simple things will have the biggest impact. And so what we wanted to do was put together a webcast that was going to allow us to highlight some of the simple things that you could do with SharePoint that wouldn't require you to write any code or really require a great deal of complexity. So the examples of what we're going to show today are pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but they can provide a lot of value to your organization. So we're going to start out really quick in PowerPoint, and we're going to just talk about a couple of the basics of workflows. So when we look at it, there's a couple of things we want to take into consideration. The first thing is the concept of a trigger. So a trigger is going to be what starts the workflow. So that can be started manually where someone pushes a button, clicks a link, does something to say, hey, I'm ready for this to start. You can also do things on the creation of an item. So whenever a new task gets created, do this. Or maybe whenever a task changes, something along those lines. So those are some of the different ways that you can start the workflows, and those are the triggers that are available to us. You also have stages and steps. This is where you can group together a collection of actions and conditions as a single unit, and it helps you define the process. So let's say I had something where I wanted to, first get an approval, and then once I get an approval, I might want to send a notification, and then I might want to get another level of approval. And I can put those into different stages and different steps so that I can work through them progressively. Also, by using the different stages in SharePoint 2013, you're going to be able to loop around. So I might have only one stage for approval, but I might be able to get to that approval process through a couple of different paths. So it allows you to kind of work together to better kind of group the process together. We also have conditions and actions. So this is really the heart of a workflow. This is the piece that goes, if what, then do this. So if this is true, then do X, Y, or Z. And so an example we might have of this is, if the task is equal to high priority, then please, send an email to a manager or something along those lines. And that's actually one of the examples that we are going to cover today. So if if it's a high priority task, then do something. If it's assigned to this group of people, then send an email to this group of people. So different things like that. We also have loops and parallel blocks. And so loops is going to be something that we are going to talk about today. And we have an example where we might want to send out a weekly reminder email. So pretty common thing that people want to do. We have even on our team, the team that I'm working on, we have a weekly status report. And one of the things that we want to do is get a reminder every week. Friday morning at 10 a.m., we want to get a reminder that says, hey, please go fill out your status report before you go home for the weekend. So it's definitely something that we can get set up inside of SharePoint where we can just create this workflow run once, have a site workflow that's going to run, and then it's going to continually loop and run as long as we have the date set. So we're going to go over that today in our webcast as well. Okay. So here's an example of our conditions. So we're basically looking at, if any field equals. This is probably our most common workflow condition that we have, and in the demos that we're going to show today, it just goes to show, what properties are we comparing and what's the trigger point that's going to say what happens next in the workflow, and then finally some of our common workflow actions. And so some of the ones we're going to use today, we're going to add date to a time, assign a task, email users, different things along those items, even update a list item. And so we're going to go ahead and now hop over to a SharePoint site and show some demos there. So here's the SharePoint site that we are working from. This is just a marketing team site. So you can imagine this is a sample sample demo site of a team that is working together on various things. And so, we have videos that we want to access, different images, branding guides, some of these different things that are here. We also have a marketing task list. And so inside of this task list, we have different items that are going to get created, things that need to get done. And the scenario that we're working with here is that if it is a high priority task, we want to send an email to the manager, or the email to someone letting them know that, hey, there's a high priority task. And so we see these tasks have been loaded. It's a high priority. So if I click on this workflow, and whenever a workflow runs in SharePoint, it creates another column inside of the list with the name of the workflow, and if you click on it, it's going to give you the history of that workflow. So when I click on this, it's saying, the task is high, so an email is going to be sent. So if I now go open my Outlook, I am going to see, here it is. So a new task has been created. This email is to provide you notification of the urgency of the task to ensure that you have insight required as the manager. Okay, and then a link to the task that they can open it, and then additional information about that. And so the concept is as I'm working and I'm creating new task items, so I may come over here. Okay, so I'm going to do test 2 here. We're going to come over here. I'm actually going to just copy this just like it is. But I'm going to change this priority to normal. I'm going to copy it again and do one as high. So we can show you what is happening on both of them. So I'm going to say stop editing this list, and we're going to give it just a couple of seconds to run through and see what we have. So if I click on this one, the status is what I'm going to get. The status of this task is low or medium, so notification is not going to be sent. And then here, it should tell us that it is high. And so a notification was sent. And if I click over here to my email, here we go. It's been created, and there is my my email about it. So how we configured this was pretty simple using SharePoint Designer and the 2013 workflows. So I'm going to go ahead and open my site inside of SharePoint Designer. So I did that. I come over here. I went to File. I would close the site and I would open the site. Just for sake of time, I already had the site open. So the site is open here, and we're going to first just look at this high priority task notification workflow. Okay, I see information about the workflow, and when I can click on it, I can say edit, and I'm going to see that I have some of these different things here. So I have just one stage in this workflow. It's a pretty simple workflow, and it says if email of high priority. And so I have something here, an if statement. So if current item priority equals high, log the status of this task is high. So the status of the task is high, so send an email. I set the variable current item URL to the list item that I want to access, and so I wanted them to be able to just open up the display form of the item, and so I know I can pull from the site and get some of the workflow context and different things like that. So I'm basically building out the URL that I want them to be able to link to, and then I'm sending an email to my marketing managers. And so what we have here is this is our condition, these are our action steps, and then we have an else statement in here, because if it doesn't equal high, we want to just log that it's not going to send an email, and then we're going to go to the end of the workflow. So this is a very simplistic workflow. When I'm doing the emailing marketing managers, I can click on this, and now I can use this designer here to figure out how I want to format the email that's going out. And I have some pretty basic formatting options here that I can use. And so I just put, information that's going to give them more details about the item that's here. So it's a new high priority task. We used red to get their eyes to it, to get the attention and different things like that. So this is what the workflow looks like. As soon as we publish the workflow, we're going to be able to run it against our list. And we see here that we have it set to whenever an item is created or changed, or even if we wanted to do it manually, we're doing this workflow. So this is what the completed workflow looks like. But let's say that we didn't have a workflow at all. We could come in here and create it from scratch. And so I wanted to do that as part of the demo today to kind of show you. So we showed you the finished product. We showed you what the workflow looks like. And now we want to build out the workflow. And as I'm going through and doing this, if you guys have any questions for me, go ahead and put them in the questions box, and I'll try to flip between the two and answer any questions while we're going through, as well as we can leave questions at the end for demos. So all I have right now is the SharePoint. I have my task list created. I'm in the site inside of SharePoint Designer, and I would come over here and click on Workflows, and I would say that I wanted to create a new list workflow. All right, so we're going to come up here and do a new list workflow, and we're going to do it against marketing tasks. Now I'm going to come here and call it live demo, just so I know the name of what it is. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to get to pick between 2013 workflows and 2010 workflows. What I like to tell people about this now is I always go with 2013 unless there's a very specific reason I need to be going with 2010. But in most cases, I'm doing all of my workflows now using SharePoint 2013. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and publish that there. All right, so now I can go through and I can set different properties about this workflow. Now in the webcast that we're going to do next week, where we talk about some more advanced workflow features, we're going to go in and talk about the visual designer and some of the different things that we can do there. For now, we're going to just stay in the text designer. But I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, email if task is high priority. Okay. Then I'm going to be able to just start building out my things. And so if I kind of know in my head what I'm going to do, I can just start typing. So when I'm in here, if I just start typing if, because I know I have an if statement, I can start typing it and then pull from the drop down the items that I want. I can also, once I click in here, I can come up and do conditions. So I can either pull from the drop down or I can start typing. It's really up to preference as to which one you want to do. So if we want to say if any value equals, let's see, then we can come here and get our else statement. Okay, so we'll start with this one. So if any value equals, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to my current item, and I'm going to pick the column that I want to do here. So I'm going to come over here and find my status column. You'll notice that these are just all of the columns that are associated with the actual list. So if I come back over here and look at this, I'm going to go into my marketing task list. And these items that are displayed in my drop-down in SharePoint Designer are really just the items that are inside of the SharePoint list. So any column that I have here, I should be able to use that as a condition for my workflow. So I'm going to come over here. Again, I'm going to go to current item. I'm going to go to task status, and I'm going to say OK. Then I get to choose what's my condition. Is it equal to, not equal, is it empty? And so I don't have to do it. Is it high? Is it low? Is it, it can be, if it doesn't equal, does the title contain this? Does it, is it greater than this? Is it less than this if it's a number? So a lot of different conditions that we can do there, and anything that's going to be available for me is going to be right here. And then the really great part about this is once I do that, it's going to pull down what values are there. So I pulled task status here, so now it's going to show me is it not started, in progress, completed, deferred, waiting on someone else. So imagine if you wanted to do a notification that says, the due date is today, but the progress, it's not started. Now you want to send out a notification. And so you're trying to pull together these different notifications to drive people to take action. So I did task status here so I could show you that, but we really wanted to pull up priority. So if I click on priority here, now I'm going to see in my drop down that I've got high, normal, and low. So I can come pick high here, and then I can start doing my actions. So what do we want to do if the priority is equal to high? In my case, the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to log something to the history list so we know what's going on with the workflow. So I'm going to just start typing in log and enter, and then I can go ahead and type in a message here. Now I can click on the ellipse, and it's going to open up a larger window for me, and I can, the current. Okay, I can put this in here. I can also click here and pull up data about it. So maybe I wanted to pull up the task title or something along those lines. So I could pull up those information if I wanted to log it inside of the history list. In our case, we don't really want to log any of that, so I'm fine. I'm going to just do that. Once we log it, we wanted to send an email. So we can come over here, and again, I know I want to send an email, so I'm going to just start typing email. And then when I get there, I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to say, well, who do you want to email? So in this case, I can go out and find who do I want it to email. So I can come over here. In my case, I can put marketing managers. This is just a SharePoint group. I could put a very specific person that I wanted to email. So there's a lot of different ways that I could do this. Now, there isn't really a great way or a step that says go find my user's manager from Active Directory. So that doesn't necessarily exist inside of this solution, but you could keep that in a list somewhere if you needed to do it. You probably wouldn't want to do that in a very large global solution, but for some small things you might be able to do that, or you might be able to, set up some type of group structure so you could find the right person that you wanted to send it to. In our example, I'm going to go ahead and send it to marketing managers. So, okay, I am going to CC the person who created the item. So I'm going to come over here, and I can do a workflow lookup for the user, and I can do current item, and I could do created by or modified by. I'm going to just go ahead and do created by and put in their email address. Okay, so it's going to pull up that information, and I'm basically just populating how I want this to go. Now here I can go ahead and put, a new high priority task. Okay, and I might want to, again, come over here, and wherever you see these little ellipses, I can click on that, and I might want to come up here and put the current item and take the title there, so that will show up inside of my subject line on my email, and then I can just come over here Okay, and again, I would just use this lookup option to find the pieces that I wanted to change. So I might want to put, percent complete. I can put that in there, and really I can build it out any way that I want to. Once I have these things here, I can also come over and then change their colors and different things around them. So I put my description here. Now I might want to get it all the same font. You see, I can change it. I can make it however I would like it to look. Okay. I might want to, come over here and say this is really important. Let's, make that red or something along those lines. So different things that I can do with it as we're building out this workflow. And I'm going to go ahead and say okay here. All right. Then I want to get in here and add my else. This is always a fun one. I never get my cursor in the right spot to write my else now. Saw it in my example. I'm not going to keep clicking around to get it here. But you have the else statement, so it's still in the if block, but it's under there, so I'm not sure why I am. The joys of live demos. All right, I'm going to stop clicking for there. So we could do if priority equals high. We could also come over here and do another statement and do, if the current item, if the priority equals low, then, maybe if the priority equals low, maybe we want to change something about the item. And so if priority is equal to low, maybe we want to update the current item. So we're going to say update the item in this list and say, if priority equals low, then we want to go ahead and set the due date to a certain value. So we can come over here and say current date. We could come over here and do a lookup, something along those lines, or we could, do a variable calculation where we said current date plus 30 days. So let's say I wanted to do something like that. I could come over here and say, if it's a low priority, we don't want it to be due for six months. So we might come over here and we want to create a variable. Let's see, So we've got a set workflow variable. So we're going to create a new variable and we're going to call it due date. And we're going to set the time equal to a date. Okay. And then we're going to set it to a value. So we might want to do today plus certain things. If we wanted to add time that way, we could also use the add time to date. So we might want to add, 6 months to today's date, and this is where we could come in and pick, if we click the ellipse, we could come in and pick the current date and set the variable to this due date that we created up here. So we could easily do that. So we're adding 6 months to it, and then we could update the current item here. And we would just simply set the due date to this workflow variable that we just created. Okay. Once that's done, so we've got two different things. If it's low, we're going to update, just set the due date to a certain thing. Maybe we want to email people and extend it out as well, say, hey, this is a low priority, so we're notifying you that we sent out the email there. So we could do different things. So we set out notifying you through email that we set the due date out 6 months. So different things that we could do there. The idea is that we can take actions, we can notify people, we can do these different things very simply through workflows that we can do inside of SharePoint Designer 2013. Once it's done, we need to do a go-to. We have to do a go-to to end the workflow, and we can either go to another stage or we can go to end of the workflow. So once we have this out here, we want to go ahead and publish this, and it's going to associate it with the list that we picked when we first started creating the workflow. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to flip over to the settings and make sure that we have it set up to go when new items are created. So I'm going to come back over here. And again, if you guys have any questions on anything that we're doing, go ahead and put them into the question board, and I'll try to answer them as we're doing this. Okay, so I'm going to update it once I change its start features. Now we are going to come back over here to the list. We're going to go over to the marketing task list again. And notice now I have a new column for that second workflow that I have. And we're going to come here and put this one down here. I'm going to do test. We can also click on the calendar if we wanted to do the dates here. So let's say, maybe I'm going to put it there, but I'm going to set low priority here, and I'll assign it to myself. Okay, so we have that here. Okay, So the first one is completed. We'll give this one just another minute, and then the page will update, and we'll see that this one's been completed as well. We have the 2 items here, so if I click this, it's going to show me that the current task is high priority, so an email will be sent. Versus if I click it on the one that's low, I shouldn't really have any messages because we didn't log anything that was there. But if we go back and look at the item, we now see that it's been updated to a 6-month item. So we've got doing different things on these items here. And then if I go back and look at Outlook, we see that my item is here. Yeah, so one of the questions that's come up in the chat room is, will all of these sessions be recorded? And the answer to that is yes. They should be, the first 2 should be up on the resources site early next week, and then the other one should be up the end of the week. Okay. All right, so this is just a pretty simple example of sending out a notification based on items in a list. So something happens in the list and you want to send out a workflow. This next piece that we're going to look at is more about this idea of I have a workflow that I want to send out on a reoccurring basis. I have a notification that I want to send out weekly or different things along those lines. And so with the addition of loops in SharePoint 2013 workflows, this becomes a very simplistic task that can be done fairly easily with no code. Okay, so I'm going to look at the questions here. There's a question that says, can we create a new list item that repeats every end dates or specific date for a range when a list item status changes? Yeah, you could do all of that through loops, and that's kind of what we're going to get into in the very next workflow that we look at. And so you would just need to take these workflow loops concept and incorporate it into the other workflow, but that should work out pretty good. There's a couple of things where I've seen like a new item gets approved, so then every 6 months we have to do something, or every 3 months we have to do something, and you know, these 5 tasks have to be done weekly, different scenarios like that. Those work really well with this new process you can do for working with these workflows. So in the example that we have a site here. There's a logo contest, and we want people to vote on the logo design that they like. So every week people are adding new ones. New logos can be here. Again, just a simple little example. And we want to send out an email to everybody once a week that says, hey, don't forget to go to the site, vote for your favorite logo. So we have an example of it here. I have to just find it. There we go. So it's from the marketing team. Reminder, reminder, you know, we're selecting new logo. They're going to be, you know, all logos, final vote's going to be based on who likes it the best, different things like that. Access the homepage and rank it. If you have any questions, let us know. So we have 2 different emails that we have going out. We have one that's just the standard, and then we have one with some additional formatting. And so we're going to go over quickly how we could do both of these. And so these are done through what is known as a site workflow. In 2010, there weren't too many ways that I could find that I could make a site workflow work for me. In 2013, I actually do a lot of these different overall notifications through a site workflow. So site workflow is accessed through site contents. So you build it inside of SharePoint Designer. Then once it's built, you go to your site contents area, and you're going to be able to see it and kick off the workflow. Under here, I see site workflows. So I can click here, and it's going to open up and show me the workflows for the site. So I've got 2, a weekly reminder for a logo contest and a weekly reminder with additional formatting. So these are the workflows that are running. I see that they're started. They haven't ended yet because they're running on a loop. And we're going to go in and look at these inside of SharePoint Designer, and then we're going to build our own. So we're going to open up SharePoint Designer here. And we're going to start with the one that doesn't have any additional formatting. So weekly reminder for logo contest. I'm going to just click on this here and click on edit the workflow. And what I in essence want this to do is I want it to loop until I don't want it to loop anymore. So I want it to start today, and I want it to go until there's an end date. So when I actually kick off and start this workflow, And I'll go show you guys this right now. I'm going to stop. I'm going to go ahead and end this workflow so I can show you what it's like when I start it. When I kick off and start this workflow, it's going to ask me when I want it to stop. So when someone's kicking this off, they're asked for an end date. And so basically what I'm asking them when they kick this off is, okay, you're going to start this. When do you want it to end? So I could come over here and say, you know what, we're going to extend this until May. I don't want it to end until May 1st, so I'm going to start it. Okay. Now my workflow is running. So I'll give it just a second. We see that it has started. So if I click on it, I see what's happening in here. Added 7 days, it's going to pause, and there we go. And so the idea is that it's going to look at what is today. It's going to set a variable to today. Then it's going to run as long as today is less than the end date. So then what's going to happen is we're going to email people, and we're going to email the marketing members. This is a group, a SharePoint group. It's going to email the SharePoint group, so everyone who has access to the site. Then it's going to add 7 days to the variable today, which is the day we created up here. It's going to log that it did that, and then it's going to pause for 7 days. So it's going to pause until that variable is true. Once it reaches this point, it's going to come back into the loop because we're inside of this loop step, and it's going to check, is today less than the end date? And as long as it's less than the end date, it's going to go through those steps again. So this is a way that we can get a loop going for a period of time. Now, when you're doing a loop step inside of SharePoint, you can do 2 different kinds. You can do a certain number of times, or you can do it within a condition. So I chose in this case to do it within a condition. Even with my status reports, reminders, and stuff like that, I may think I want something to run infinitely, and in reality I don't want to write a workflow that's going to run infinitely and always run. So I could set it up that it's going to be doing that, but I'm probably every 6 months or so going to want to change out the text or something like that. So, or you want to restart the workflow or something along those lines. But you could set it up so that it's always going. You can also have multiple workflows going, so you can set it up so that it's looping, to the certain point, and then it's going to send something every day, or it's going to do something along those lines. So these are all the things that we could do. But in our scenario, I just wanted, what's the end date? So I'm going to first go in and set a variable to today, compare today to the end date that they gave us, then reset today to a future date and wait for that future date, and then check again and go through the loop. Okay? And so that's going to send out that email. If I click on marketing members, which is really just that email line that's going out to the marketing members, I can put in my title. Then I can go in and put in information, whatever text that I wanted to put there. A lot of times, though, people want to maybe put a little bit more formatting or different things like that inside of their emails. And so I touted these as no-code solutions, so we're definitely not going to jump into this one too hard. But if you wanted to look at a workflow that had some additional formatting, notice it looks exactly the same as the other. But when I click on this guy here, I've got some additional formatting there. And the way that I did that was up here in the advanced properties. So I click on advanced properties, and what you see is that the body of the email is really in HTML. So I can come over here, click on the ellipse, and I have all of that information in HTML. So in theory, I could write whatever HTML I wanted to. I could update it, and I could put it in here. And then that's what's going to show up inside of my email. So notice my stuff, it had the extra headers with reminder. Those would be the things that would be happening inside of that email here. So, but this is the extra formatting that's there. So again, that requires a little bit more syntax and semicolons. So if you're up for taking that on, you can update them there. I don't really do that too often, but I do get asked that a lot, so I wanted to at least tell you guys what it would take to do that if you wanted to do that. Okay, so we're going to go back into SharePoint Designer now and start fresh with a site workflow. So we're going to go to Site Workflows. This time we're going to go to Workflows, and then we're going to click on Site Workflow. So click on this. I'm going to just call it Weekly Reminder. Okay. SharePoint 2013 workflow, we're going to go ahead and put it in here. Okay. Now, this is where we can go in and put in the loops and different things along those lines. So we're first going to, say weekly reminder. And we come in here, and we want to set up an initiation form parameters because we want to say, well, how long do you want to do this? So we're going to say initiation form, come up here, and we're going to put in a date for end date. We're going to make this equal to date and time. That's fine. Say OK. So that is going to be what pops up when people fill out the workflow and say start. They're going to have to give it an end time. And then we want to create a variable here. So we're going to create a variable here and call it today. Make that equal to a date and time. Okay. Then we're going to set a workflow variable, and the one we're going to set is equal to today. We're going to click on it and set it equal to the current date. Okay. So then what we've done is we have first asked the user, so we're going to give them a form that says, when do you want this to end? And then we have another variable that's just happening inside of our workflow that we're going to keep being able to reset to whatever the current date is so that we can kick off the workflow. So now we're going to come over here and we're going to loop, and we're going to loop within a condition. Okay? And we want to loop where, notice when I click on it, it's going to come up and let me pull things. We want to get our workflow variable. So our workflow variable today, we're going to do less than. And we might want to do less than or equal to if we want it to go at that last time. And then we're going to come over here and say workflow variables again and pick end date. Okay, so then it is going to loop and go through the process as long as the variable today is less than equal to end date. So you might also want to rename that variable instead of using today as current date. Different things like that. It depends on how you want to do that. So we're going to say email here. And this is where we want to email these users. So it comes up very similar to working in Outlook and getting an email. So we're going to come over here and say members. And then we can come in here and okay. So if we wanted to turn this into a hyperlink, we can simply highlight here, come over here to the globe and hit this, and then we can go to an address. And if we go look at the workflow context, we can get the current site URL. Okay, so it's going to take us to the current site URL, which in our case, our stuff is on the home page, so that would work great. And then we can come in here and put in, whatever text that we wanted to, any information that we had. We could put information from the item, different things along those lines. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay. Once we email this, we need to add some time so that we can make today a future date. So we're going to add time to date. And here's where we can come over here and, add 7 days to our workflow variable today. And we're going to put it out to today. Okay. And then we're going to pause the entire workflow until we reach that time. then the way that the looping works is as soon as we finish up this step, as soon as we hit where variable today equals true, it's going to come back up here and find out if it still falls into this looping condition, so this looping condition right here, or it's going to fall out and transition to the end of the workflow. Okay, so once I have all of this here, I can hit publish, and it's going to go ahead and build out my workflow piece here. And then once this is complete, we should see this under site contents, and then we can go ahead and send the workflow out here. So we're going to come over here to our site, go to the gear, and go to site contents. I'm going to come over here to site workflows. And I see I have this additional workflow piece here now, and I can click on this, and it's going to ask me for my end date. Okay, so I had it defaulted to today's date. You know, we want to do 12/31-14. Say start. Okay, refresh this page. And in just a second, when that workflow kicks off, we can see that it's there. And if I click on it, it's going to not really show me anything here. But if we come up here, we have the email that we just sent here. If I wanted the information to show up here, I would have needed to do like I did in my previous one and log some things to the history list. So here I'm logging what's happening and what's going on. But same concept, I just didn't do the logging. If you do the logging, you get a much richer experience, because if you're anything like me, in 3 weeks when you go on to another task, you will not remember all of the pieces that you did here. And so by logging it, you won't necessarily have to open it up again inside of SharePoint Designer to see what's happening, because the log will give you that hint of what is going on. So these are just two very common examples of things that you can do with notification emails inside of workflows. So we left about 15 minutes at the end for questions. I hope that you guys found this helpful. And if you have any questions, I'd love to, answer them for you if I could. So you can just put them in the questions box and I'll go through them. If you don't have any questions and you're going to hang up, or while we're waiting for those questions to come in, you'll be able to find this webinar once we get it posted on the resources site at sharepoint.rackspace.com/resource center. You can find it there. There's also other webcasts and different things, different webcasts and things that we have previously. So the questions there, can you please show us that log again in SharePoint, not in SharePoint Designer? Yep. So if I come back over here to Site Contents and I just open up the other workflow that was logging it, and then that should show us. So here we go. We see that I kicked it off and it added 7 days, and you have it there. I also have it, if I open up this one's been running for quite some time. So for this one, we see all of the different times it has been logged there. So we could, verify all of the different times that the email sent. So this one has actually been running since 2/22 and sending out that email. So Gordy, I hope that's what you were looking for, but if you have another question about that, let me know. Okay, great. Awesome. Let's see if any other questions come in. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. It's a pretty simple thing to do inside of SharePoint, but definitely has a lot of impact as you're trying to get users working with the sites and getting excited about using SharePoint. The more we can send them an email, I find, the more the reminders and stuff like that and notifications. Okay, so Costas asked, the same way we created an email, can we create new items with a loop? And the answer is 100% yes. So you can do anything inside of a loop that's in the actions here. So any of the actions you can do inside of a workflow in general, you can do inside of a loop. Okay, another question, is there a way to list out all of the workflows across the site? Not out of the box, there's not going to be necessarily a way to do that. Since workflows are contextual, you would have to go into the different lists and see where they're being used. You could go into SharePoint Designer and click on workflows here, and this is going to show me all of the workflows that are on the site. Okay, so Melanie asked, what if you have a person that wants to opt out of the emails? Do you have to remove them from their group or just add and accept? So what I would do with that, Melanie, is if I had to set up a like a list of people that wanted to get workflows, I would probably create a basic SharePoint list, so like a custom list, and I would call it, subscriptions. And then I would let people add themselves to that list if they wanted to be emailed. And then instead of emailing a group, I would point and pull the people from that list. So I would do things a little bit differently if I needed the opt-in and out. The examples that I showed today are more of specifically around I want everyone or everyone in a group done. So you would probably do something similar, but you might have to do it just a little bit differently if you wanted people to be able to say, no, I don't want that. The question was, is there a way to list out workflows across the site using PowerShell? I'm pretty certain the answer to that is yes, but that falls into the categories of syntax and semicolons. So I wouldn't really do much of that. You'd have to have server access to do that. Kaza, can we have a loop with an or and? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So I might need a little bit more context to make sure that I'm answering that one correctly. So you should be able to do the, if I think I understand the question correctly with the loops, to say, go into this loop or go into that loop, you should be able to separate those different things with stages. So you might have multiple stages in the workflow, and then it's going to go through a very small loop, and then based on that loop, instead of this going to an end of a workflow, this would go to another stage. So I think you could get to that scenario that you're talking about, Costas, if you had the right stages, so that you could be looping through different pieces so that they would pull out at one point and then jump to another stage. Some good questions. In the next webcast, we're going to talk a little bit more about some complex things we can do with workflows. So hopefully you'll join us for that one. We're going to go into the designer views and different things like that and talk about that. So Gordy asked, are there any resources out there that I'd recommend to give multiple examples of workflows and use cases? Something that folks new to workflows can use as a guidance. That is a great... That's a great question. I might have to think on that and answer in the next webcast. I don't know of a good resource right now that people could do that, but that might even be something I'd consider putting together for just common examples of things that you're trying to do with workflows in different business scenarios where they're common. So let me do a little bit of research on that, and if I find something, I'll tweet it out or add it to the resources site or something like that. Yeah, so I will, I'll dig into that one. That's definitely an interesting one. It is an area where things are, there's a lot of disjointed information out there, so maybe I can look at pulling some together. Awesome. Cool. Do we have any other questions before we wrap up? It's been great having you guys with us today, so look forward to chatting with you guys next week.